Hi everyone, we're going to give everyone a chance to log in and then we'll go ahead and get started. Hi Zoe, I actually just responded to your email. I wanted to let you know. Sorry, I didn't see it sooner. Okay, I think for the most part, everyone should be on. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you all. Are you all able to see that? Cool. Well, welcome back everyone. Thank you for joining us again. Um, this is our Youth for Justice Summer Institute, session 3 on education. It looks like we have pretty good numbers again. So again, thank you for joining. Let's go ahead and get started. So this is our meeting agenda today. I know it looks quite long, but most of the things are a lot shorter than all of our other presentations and all of our other sessions. So just bear with me. The welcome, again, the 5 minutes we kind of give everyone to log in. We're gonna have a quick check-in and talk about insurance. I'm gonna go over a real quick volunteer opportunity. Then we have an awesome speaker, Azucena, who will be going over the census. Then we have a couple of videos for you all listed here. We're going to go ahead and take a quick stretch break, and then we'll talk about discrimination in education, and then we'll have some discussion time and then close out, okay? Does anyone have any quick questions? If not, you can always put them in the chat as well. Cool. So quick check-in, again, in case we have any new people today, my name is Nick Hondro. I'm the Youth for Justice Facilitator, and I'm the Systems and Data Analyst here at Siren. Again, if any of you are able to have your cameras on, I know a couple of you do, that's great. If not, that's fine as well, but we always enjoy being able to see you when we can. Again, joining us today is Vanessa, who's the other Youth for Justice facilitator. And we want to go over t-shirts again. Reminder, t-shirts, we have that t-shirt design contest with everything outlined at the bottom of the syllabus. So if you have any questions, please refer to there. If not, go ahead, send us an email or a message. My GroupMe is down, so I contacted support to see how I could get back onto it. But I believe Vanessa's also on there as well, so we should be able to answer questions on there. And again, remember, there is a $50 gift card prize if your design is the one that is chosen. So feel free, is anyone thinking of doing the competition? Yeah, we have a couple of people. Awesome. Cool. We're going to go ahead move forward unless anyone has any questions. No? Okay. So we have a quick announcement on a volunteer opportunity with Siren. So tomorrow, August 5th, there's going to be a training for volunteers interested in working with immigrants and refugees, particularly in California. So if you're interested, I think most of you follow us on Instagram, but definitely follow us on Instagram. More information and links are on there, but here's information as well. I did also receive the resources from our last session. So when I send out those resources to you all, I'll also be sending out this flyer later tonight. Thank you for the question, Jennifer. I know that there's opportunity to do like in-house volunteering, but it's very, very specific for things that can only be done in-house. So depending on what the needs are of the teams that present tomorrow, they'll let you know. I'm not exactly sure what departments or who's getting volunteers for what projects. I know we have a couple, but I would assume most of them are virtual. Yeah, these would definitely count as volunteer hours. We can definitely sign off or send you a link, or sorry, an email stating that you volunteered with us and how many hours, if that's what you need. That's definitely also a question to ask during the training as well to see how they do that. But we do get a lot of students volunteering. Any other questions before we move on? Cool. Thank you for your questions. So real quick, we're gonna have a census overview with Azucena. I don't know if you want to introduce yourself real quick, Azucena, and then I'll give you sharing controls.
Yeah, so hi everybody, my name is Azucena Nala. I am currently a immigrant rights fellow here with Siren, working with a couple of different things, and today I get to present on the census.
You should be able to share now.
So I can't share while you're sharing.
Oh, sorry. Okay, you should be able to do that now.
All right, so today's presentation is titled Siren Census 2020 Workshop. I'll start off by talking a little bit about the census and what it is. After that, I'll talk about the importance and a couple of other details around the 2020 census, particularly for this year. The census happens every 10 years. It has 9 basic questions that you're asked. Some of you or your family members may have already completed this for you. Others have not. Currently, we are at a 63% response rate nationwide, which is not too bad, actually, but we are trying to get numbers to go up, especially because the date to submit the census has changed from October 31st to September 30th this year, giving us 1 month shorter than we would expect. The census questions that may be asked are as follows. So they asked about where you live. Normally you get these questions in the mail. They come in a packet and they have a barcode that you are able to put in online if you're answering online or send it back. They asked how many people are living since April 1st of 2020. April 1st is when a lot of people normally will submit their census. It'll ask if there were any additional people living there. Maybe somebody has moved out of the house, or maybe somebody has come in. It depends. They'll ask what type of house was it? Was it a house? Was it an apartment? A mobile home? Maybe it was a dorm room. I know a lot of college students have trouble filling out the census when they get back home because they don't know where to put. And normally, if you are living on campus, you would put, during April 1st, 2020, you would put your campus address. They ask for your phone number, the person's name, sex, age, date of birth, race, ethnicity. Yeah, and usually they'll ask if they live somewhere else or how they're related to the main person filling it out. So the census is important because it will determine how $1.5 trillion get distributed to the state and local governments. California, for these upcoming 10 years, will be getting $180 million. Every year, these get distributed by year, so they get divided based on the population. In California, we've noticed that there's an undercount in our community means, less funding for schools, roads, and hospitals. So we're trying to get those numbers up, because when those numbers go up, statistically, we will be getting more money, more funding, and representation. Representation is a really big thing. California is in danger of losing one electoral seat this year. So another way to get representation that is not voting, because a lot of people may not be eligible to vote, is through the census. The census will allow those numbers to be verified and viewed. So yeah, we want everybody to be counted, and by filling out the census, we're ensuring that more people are counted. Usually there's an undercount that happens, and meaning that we're not getting the actual adequate funding that we need for schools, hospitals, and other institutions. You can take the census in various ways. One of them is online. It's usually easiest, where most people are able to go to the my2020census.gov website and complete it online. There's a phone number and a mail that you can get. Usually every household gets the mailing packet, and it gives you the options to call and to fill it out online as well. So the time to take the census is literally now. So the official deadline is September 30th, not October 31st, like I was saying in the beginning. This year, we got cut short a month, which will definitely impact the numbers. And as many people have been commenting, this is one of the strategies being done by the administration in the government this year, because they know that when people are not counted, the systems all kind of just get out of balance, and they're not accurately representing who lives where and who is actually a part of the US. So August 14th, which is in 2 weeks, it'll be not this Friday, but the following Friday, will be the last day to self-respond, meaning that after August 14th, if you have not submitted the census on your own, somebody else will be coming to your house, either knocking or calling, to make sure that we get all the numbers, as many numbers as possible. Those people are verified census workers. They have their census bags, their census badges with watermarks, and you're able to also call a different number to verify that the worker is actually a census worker representative. Everybody kind of gets a little nervous when somebody knocks at your door and asks you for information on this, like personal information. But this personal information, like I said, will only be the 9 questions that ask for your name, how many people live in the household, and all that stuff. They will not be asking about immigration status. That is actually one of the questions that Trump has been trying to get onto the census. However, it's not on the census, and it won't probably ever be, because of the Title 13 protection. And even if it were, the information on the census is not shared. The only things that are shared are the numbers. Basically how many numbers are in each county, maybe in each state, maybe in each city. It depends, but never the actual information, such as the names or the addresses of the people. So currently, Santa Clara has 69.2% response rate as of May. I don't have the current one, but like I said, the state one is at a 63% at the moment. In 2010, the final response rate was 74%. So we want to be able to track as many people as possible. So if you know anybody that hasn't filled out the census, tell them to do so before August 14th, or they will be getting somebody at their door or on their phone. It's always important. Here at Siren, we do believe that being counted is really important. And with this time change, it's giving people less time to fill it out and actually be able to say where they live during April 1st. Privacy. Like I said, your census responses are
Yeah, Susanna, your
law.
audio cut out for a little bit.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, should I go back or is this fine?
From this slide, if you can just go.
Thank you. So like I was saying, the privacy concerns, the census responses are protected by federal law, more specifically Title 13 of the US Code, where it states that the census is not allowed to share personal information. If personal information is shared with other agencies, this can result in a $250,000 fine or 5 years in federal prison. So the workers actually take an oath before they begin working, and they know that there's consequences if information is given out. There's no citizenship question on the census. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled this on 2019. So information is not shared with ICE or other agencies. For those that think that it won't make a difference, definitely won't make a difference if one person did it, but when one person thinks that they're the only one, there's definitely many others who think the same way, and all of those will be adding up, leaving communities to be underfunded and underrepresented during the upcoming years. The deadline, like I said, has been changed to September 30th, which is the main message that we're trying to get out to the public. They announced this change this week, so we're trying to get as many people counted as possible. So communities of color are most likely the ones to be undercounted, especially for those who are unhoused. Many times they go uncounted, but the census has 3 days out for their workers to go out into the communities and verify with those who are maybe not living in ideal conditions to know where they were living during April 1st. These days will be on September 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. Because of this time change, the census is also hiring many more staff members and training at faster rates to be able to adequately get more numbers. This change was definitely not expected, and they are going to be following safety precautions due to COVID and all this other stuff. The census is another way of voting, essentially, because people below 18 can't vote. And many of the decisions that are made in your counties or in your states are based on those who the people represent. Usually schools affect many people who are under the age of 18 who can't vote. And schools really do need funding, especially during times like this when people are thinking of going back during COVID and there's not enough funding to keep our communities safe. Undocumented immigrants can't vote, legal residents can't vote. Essentially, if you're not a citizen, you can't vote, but the census is one way of making yourself heard, one way of telling representatives, hey, I'm here too, I count, and it's really important for everybody to kind of come in as well. So I'll be taking questions now. I don't know if anybody does.
Real quick, first of all, thank you for the presentation. I know this was a little last minute, but I see there are some comments, but I see that Mater has their hand raised.
Okay.
And did I say that name right? Maybe it wasn't a question. Maybe they were raising their hand for something else. But real quick, thank you, Jacqueline. Yeah, so I'm going to cover this thing real quick, Susana, before the next question. Yeah, the census was going through a lot of different things over the past year where the administration was trying to add illegal questions regarding citizenship to further alienate undocumented people from answering, which historically have entered the census at very, very low rates because of fear of their information being held by the federal government, and particularly departments like ICE and Custom and Border Patrol, Homeland Security, stuff like that. So yeah, the census was going through quite a lot. I think it went to the Supreme Court, if I'm not wrong, where it was shut down that question could not be asked.
Correct.
And I don't know if you have anything to add, Susana?
No, so yeah, Trump administration has been trying to basically limit how many people are counted. And this date change has been one other way that they're doing it. But thankfully, I know that here in San Jose, there's a lot of organizations and community groups that are trying to go out and promote the census, getting everybody counted in the Central Valley as well. I know that there's more people being hired and more people trying to be on the ground. Although it's dangerous due to COVID, like people are taking precautions and they're trying to get as many people counted because it is something that had been going around that that question would be on the census, but it definitely is not. And like I said, the Title 13 is one of the protections that it has.
Yeah, it looks like Betsy has a question. Can Trump ever have the power to not count undocumented people in any way? Because I think I read something about him wanting to. So I think that's where this previous discussion about adding the undocumented question, there's no legal way right now where that can happen. But again, if you make it so people don't want to answer or volunteer to decline to answer from stuff like that, that's a way where immigrants and undocumented people can get severely undercounted. And what you have to think about is about areas with high density of immigrants or people who are in marginalized communities who may not historically answer the questions on the census very often. Those communities will disproportionately not answer the census, meaning that, again, they will receive resources at much lower rates because the numbers will be skewed, right? Do we have any other questions? I see that Jocelyn has a question. Are folks coming to take the census at people's homes a new technique? I don't know if you can answer that, Azucena, but I believe that that's always been the case, right? Where they'll go knock to your door if you have not answered.
Yes, so historically they have come to the door or have called. Now they're planning on doing that more. Usually it's done to double check that the information is accurate. Even if you did answer, sometimes they will call you or go to your house and ask to speak with the household representative to be able to confirm that all the information is correct. They're trying to double check. And for those that haven't answered, they're trying to get all that information as well.
Yeah. Do we have any other questions? It looks like that's it. Thanks again, Azucena, for taking the time today to teach us a little bit about the census. I know it's a really, really important thing that's going on right now in the midst of everything else that's going on.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for having me. Thanks, everybody.
No problem. Awesome. And there's a lot of thank yous in chat. Okay, yeah. And so we're gonna move right along. If any of you have any questions while we're talking, stuff like that, actually, I have to do this. Again, put them in chat. Share computer side. So again, we're gonna try something a little different today. Again, we're always open to feedback from you all about how you kind of want these sessions to be ran, what material you like to see. I know we got a lot of good responses from last session's exhibit tour. So we're gonna try something else a little new here as well. So moving along, I'm gonna show you all this video. It's only about 3 minutes. I'm gonna go ahead. I put optimization so you can hear the audio, but let me know if you can't hear the audio so I can make sure that I get it right, okay?
The cost to educate undocumented immigrant children. It's one of the most divisive issues in America today. It's something being discussed a lot in the state of Texas. More than 1 out of every 10 unaccompanied immigrant minor will enter school this year in that state. CCTV's Ginger Vaughn has more from Houston.
Principal Marie Marino runs a Houston school for immigrant kids who barely speak English. Its name reflects its mission. Los America's Newcomer School is a school for newcomers to this country, many from Central America. Marino says she feels like a second parent to many of the kids.
A lot of our students are getting to know their parents for the first time. You know, we have children who have been left behind because mom had to come and work and provide. She wasn't able to provide a stable home or maybe food or shelter in their country, and so she decided to migrate north and get a job here in the United States and provide money back to their country to help support their children.
All too many arrive without parents, part of an immigrant wave that federal officials have started calling the surge. The number of them caught at the U.S. border has more than doubled in the past 2 years. The lucky ones get sponsors and wind up at schools like this one.
Experts say a lack of language ability in a completely new environment could pose challenges for these children as they start school.
According to the Federation for American Immigration Reform, nearly 37,000 unaccompanied immigrant children will have enrolled in U.S. public schools this year, at a cost of more than $750 million. Texas is a destination for around 14% of them, the highest number in the U.S. Many of the kids caught at the Texas border come from Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala. These 2 Honduran children have both their parents here.
They should be in school right now, but the paperwork has been difficult, so they don't feel strange that they don't know English yet, but I'm not sure how they'll deal once they're in school.
Among the many challenges these kids face is resentment. By some estimates, it costs around 30% more to teach a student who doesn't speak English. In America, nearly half of all property taxes go to public school funding, and with few exceptions, their parents, if they have any, don't own property. Despite such hardships, Marino still considers her kids fortunate.
I call my kids here the lucky ones who got here, who have an opportunity to succeed in life, to do well, to learn English, to be bilingual, to graduate from high school, go to college, and do something that they probably would have never had the opportunity to do in their own country.
When you walk the halls at this school, you can hear the new arrivals to this country chatter in more than 30 languages. By the end of this school year, English will be one of them. Ginger Vaughn, CCTV, Houston.
Awesome. Can you all hear me? Cool. So I had a couple of discussion questions on that short video that we can go over. Feel free to throw out any thoughts you may have that aren't from these discussion questions, but I wanted to put it out there. What are the benefits of having schools like this? If anyone wants to share. Okay, so I'm seeing being surrounded by people with similar experiences. Do we see any other benefits of investing in these types of schools?
Sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
Okay, I'll say real quick, one of the benefits to having them, I think, is it can be better than sort of throwing them in like a regular public school, because a lot of time they get pushed into public schools, but like teachers won't take the time to like invest time in those students who need more help learning English or like English as a second language. But in these schools, they get like that full attention to be able to become bilingual with the proper resources.
Right. I think Jocelyn, you also had something to say?
It was just similar to what she said. I was going to say that the education can be more specific to the student. Everything from their peers who can like relate to them, or even their teachers. In a public school education setting, I feel like it can be hard to find all teachers who are more understanding of like their experiences. So I think having people like staff in the school who can understand their experiences can make a significant difference in their experience.
Right. I'm going to read off some of the messages from chat. I see a lot of it has to do with the fact that teachers, staff, and counselors can provide specific resources for students. I'm seeing things like they can relate to their peers and their teachers. They don't have to feel like they're falling behind. And they can avoid like the feeling of isolation. I see that Diana mentioned that. Yeah, so there's a lot to do with specialization, right? I think Alejandra, you had something to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, like, what did you mean by your question like this? Because I thought this was just like a normal public school.
Right, so this school specifically is for students who have come to this country. Like they mentioned, a lot of them were students from El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala, who were found at the border and were able to be sponsored to stay in the United States. Right, so these students are kids who, whether they were brought by their families at a later age, or they had already been learning Spanish or whatever their native language was, but didn't know any English, they're put into a school like this. And San Jose and Santa Clara County does also have schools like this.
Okay, because I heard that it was a public school, but I wasn't sure like what exactly made it different, because my opinion was that just that like public schools are super underfunded and understaffed to be able to like really accommodate to the needs of these kids. But if there's specific schools for that sort of like demographic, then I think it makes more sense that they would be more supportive. But yeah, I just feel like with any sort of public institution, there's always going to be limitations, and like it's super important to know who the people are that are attending these kids and like to what extent, because the teacher also said that she felt like a second parent, and I just think like how many of these kids are getting counseling, or how many of these kids are their basic needs being met, because like a lot of these children do come with this sort of like resentment or this sort of like generational trauma of being left behind or feeling like they're more left behind. And so like I was just curious, like to what extent are they like actually equipped to like meet the demand and like the needs of these kids.
Right, and that goes over onto Khan. Let me read a couple more of the chat. I saw that Nazrin had mentioned that the teachers also look like they come from diverse backgrounds, which oftentimes helps with not feeling alienated if your teachers don't look like you, especially in a school with such unique circumstances. And Alejandra, you make great points as well. So yeah, moving on to cons. Thank you all for your answers, because there are potential cons, some that you yourself, Alejandra, have highlighted. I see here that Francis had mentioned, resources like funding, right? That's kind of a core issue in education, especially in marginalized communities. But what other cons do we see, or potential, right, that we would see, maybe not at this school, but others like it? Okay, so I see that they may feel isolated. I'm assuming from other students who maybe go to more traditional public school. Yeah, Mater? Is that how I say your name? Sorry.
It's Mahadir, but it's like fine. I don't really care that much. And
You said Mahadir?
yeah, like Mahadir. Yeah, the comment popped up of like public backlash, and I was thinking it might be easier to like target those students when they're in a separate school with like talking about like how schools are funded, and like also based on like where the schools are located. Because like I know like at my school we had like ESL, but like one thing that they would do is like the ESL classes always got like maybe like 70% less funding than the rest of the classes. Like the school really like, we were like I moved out of ESL into regular, and like we in like regular classes were like reading books while they were playing Barney and singing along. So like that's like where my worries come from, because I know that tends to happen and it's sort of not good for education.
Right. I'm seeing a couple of comments on here also. Daniela was mentioning transitioning over to just American high school might be difficult. I know a lot of it could be like culture shock. I know Francis was mentioning moving on to higher education, where again, they may feel lost or isolated because it's probably a completely different experience than what they have had. And then I know some people are also mentioning things like just the level of education, kind of like you did. You know, whether it's up to par to, you know, the average standard, whatever that may be, especially in states like California, where the standard of education is much higher than in other states where those disparities may be bigger, right? I see that Diana was mentioning that they may not be on track to where the other students may be, and then also citing some lack of resources. Yeah, those are all potentials, right? And it's definitely will depend a lot, unfortunately, on politics, on, you know, who's in charge, who's kind of deciding where the money is going. So it's always important to look at these things with a critical lens, because implementation is always key, right? Did anyone have any additional thoughts before we move on or move forward? Cool. So I'm gonna go ahead and move on to the next thing. So this is another video, how Black high school students are hurt by modern day segregation.
The mold, the carpet, the walls itself, the classrooms, the teachers, everything that you need in the school or could use in the school is not there. At this point, it's just like a daycare for teenagers.
Students at Block High School in rural Louisiana say conditions at their school are so bad that they're struggling to get an education.
As you can see right here, if you look closely, you got some the water that's been leaking. That's turning to mold. Like when you go in the classrooms, you can smell it.
That building there, B building, it is completely unsafe, but we still do go in there as far as using the auditorium.
These are the textbooks they were given at the beginning of the school year.
Show me what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like.
Teachers across the country continue to go on strike, but public education in rural areas gets little national attention. We traveled to Catahoula Parish, Louisiana, one of the poorest parishes, one of the poorest states in the country, to see why students are speaking out and what conditions in Deep South schools are like more than 6 decades after desegregation.
They try to make you a world history teacher, geography teacher, and a ACT prep, and a standardized test prep teacher. And are you certified for any of that?
I'm only certified in physical education.
Their athletic coach, Benny Volt, inspired his students to speak out.
I taught history for a little while. I taught the amendments. And, you know, the first amendments, you have the right to protest.
They made you teach history, so you said, okay, I'll teach them history. I'll teach them the history of protest.
I teach the history of protest.
Coverage tonight of the protests at Block High School.
We got teachers that are not certified teaching subjects that they don't even know.
If you're a teacher and you don't know what you're doing, how you expect me to do.
Block High School is situated in Jonesville, the poorest section of Catahoula Parish. Nearly 70% of seniors are Black, and about 60% of students here do not go on to college after graduation. But 13 miles away, there's another school in the same school district that looks a lot different. Nearly 90% of the senior class here is white. They perform better academically and enroll in college at a higher rate.
So we just tried to film inside Harrisonburg High School, but the superintendent won't let our cameras inside. They don't want the principals to talk to us on camera. But there's a clear, notable difference in how the school looks compared to Block High School.
Dr. Gilly Freeman is in charge of all schools in the district, including Block and Harrisonburg High School.
When we talk to students and we talk to families at Block High School, they compare it to Harrisonburg. They say Harrisonburg has beautiful facilities. Why do you think they're saying there's such a difference?
Several of the other schools, communities have passed bond issues specifically around facility renovation and refurbishment, and in the recent years, Jonesville hasn't passed any such issue to address their schools.
Freeman says that the state of Louisiana gives a set amount of money to school districts, but individual towns can raise additional money by issuing a bond or a tax.
What this has allowed them to do is to create inside a single school district high schools that are really inequitable in terms of their funding when it comes to facility maintenance, in a way that creates schools that are economically segregated and racially segregated.
Belinda Davis is a public policy professor and education advocate at Louisiana State University. We showed her video from inside Block High School.
The entire school board of Catahoula Parish ought to be ashamed that they have a school in that district that is in that kind of shape.
Do you think it's fair, the system as it is right now?
Well, that's a perception issue. Overall funding for public education for our district has reduced over the period of time. The demographics and the population of our parish has decreased, and quite frankly, because of economic conditions, a lack of business in the industry.
Block High School graduate Tamiko Bloodsaw works as an accountant at a local sheriff's office. She says the school district's budget shows how unequal the funding is.
This is their 2018-2019 budget. Jonesville has 3 schools that they're funding. This is the amount of revenue that's brought in for just Jonesville schools. Upkeep for the building and the grounds come out to be about $22,000. You have to divide that by 3 schools.
Is that enough money?
No, it's
for Block
not.
High School to get fixed?
No, not compared to the other schools. But you come to Harrisonburg, one school, they get a total of $20,000.
$20,000, whereas Block High School is getting like $7,000.
Yes.
These parents are getting ready to meet with school board members and the superintendent to demand that Block High School get fixed.
Okay, the first thing that we really need to discuss is where are they in the progress of the repairs for Block High School?
How did that meeting go?
What's going to happen is it's going to come down to a matter of integrity and accountability. Are they going to be a board and district of their word and start to do what we need them to do for the best interest of our children, and whether or not they're going to hold the necessary people accountable?
One potential solution that people talk about to fix the schools here is just to consolidate all the schools in the district. But we just got off the phone with a school board member who says that parents at Harrisonburg High School don't want their kids going to the same school as Block students because of their, quote, moral character.
I have some friends that go to Harrisonburg School, but they've talked about us and came back, and my friends are no longer friends with them because of the comments and things that they've said.
What kind of comments?
Racial comments.
The students there have said things about
students and teachers.
Hey, look, what kind of things?
Like, I'm not coming down to teach those animals or, you know, stuff like that.
Shakold wants to go to college, but she says she's not ready.
Honestly, I don't know what I'm going to do after high school. I might go to college and I might go into the Army because I don't think I'm mentally prepared for college as far as the education that I've lacked so far, and I just don't want to really go through that struggle.
So you don't feel like this school has prepared you for college?
No, sir.
You don't feel like you've gotten the education you need?
No, sir.
Who do you think should be held accountable for this?
Honestly, I think they all should be held accountable because it starts at the top. It takes us children to protest, to have people like you come down and talk to us. It's been going on far too long and you're a little too late.
Awesome. So what did we think of that? I have some discussion questions up here as well. And we don't have to go in order. You can just talk about any of the questions or anything you feel like talking about based on that video.
It just makes me so angry that there's nothing being done to help these Black students because they're obviously all capable of doing so much, and just the fact that the district is just kind of ignoring their needs and prioritizing the white schools over them just shows how the system has failed Black students time again, and that segregation still exists within the education system.
I have something to say about what we just watched. I know that I'm not sure what her title was, but the lady from the other school,
The superintendent.
the superintendent, she said that the school, not the district, or a couple schools asked for a bond to get more money to help repair the school. And one thing that I have been learning is that people of color aren't really not allowed, but they're not given the same opportunity financially to get bonds and reconsolidate their properties and all of this stuff. So it's like, oh, they could just go get a bond. It's like, no, it's not really that simple. The community itself can't afford a bond. So that's one thing that came to mind. It's like, that's not the solution. And especially if it's like a unit, it's a district problem. It's not their problem, just the school's problem. It's a whole district problem.
Right, and just to clarify, a bond is essentially like a measure or something that is passed by local government to provide like a tax, whether that be on property or an additional tax, to address a certain issue for a public institution. So specifically, like schools are funded a lot by bonds when they're going to do major renovation projects or are going to add on to their neighborhood schools. I see that Zoe mentioned that it's really heartbreaking seeing how the school board is letting down Black students and keeping them from succeeding, right? A big point that I will point out about this is also, the way they're organizing. A quote that Chercold in the video had mentioned that it takes students to make noise to bring people like the correspondent that was there to hear them out, right? Do we have any other thoughts?
I found it really shocking to hear that the girl didn't believe in her academic abilities to succeed and go on to college, and so she was already thinking about joining the military, if I remember correctly. And it just kind of hurt me to see that she didn't feel that her school well prepared her and that she wasn't intelligent, when through her words she already knew that the system was broken, and she knew that it has to start from the top if these students want change to happen in their districts.
All right. Francis also mentioned that it's noticeable that the underfunding of these schools all comes down to racial biases within those who hold more power and privilege. Yeah. Going on to like the question on fundraising, it's like, have you or your parents ever had to raise money for school essentials, right? I think that's something that oftentimes we just assume is normal, but like, have you ever had to raise money for like textbooks or classroom materials? I know that's happened at my school.
I'll say something. I used to think it was like normal, having like coaches and all that teach like so many different subjects and like do all these things. Like I really thought that was normal because I grew up with that, and like having like, you know, holes in the wall and like mold everywhere, when like the school can afford like a brand new gym, but they can't like give the students like those resources, you know, and like get adequate educators for like such subjects. So yeah, that's crazy that, you know, mostly my whole life in grade school, I thought that was normal, but you know, learning all these new things, I'm starting to realize that, you know, it's not, and that shouldn't be happening, along with what you said, the fundraising that so many of us are so used to, you know, like hearing that the teachers put things out of their pocket, or that like the students are having to raise funds for to get a better education.
Right.
And I also said a comment, and I'm not sure. I texted something in the chat how I'm not sure. I don't remember exactly what the term is. I read about this a while ago. I'm not sure if it was redlining. Someone could correct me, but how like the poor and rich school, they're like, we're not exactly rich, but with the school with better conditions, they're like really close to each other, like in the same general area, but the school with the majority of Black students like is like greatly racially discriminated, that they get less funds, and they're the ones going to school in terrible conditions versus the better funded school that's like not that far away, but you know, it's just so racially different that the Black students aren't getting priority at all.
Right, and redlining, yeah, that's a great comment. Redlining has a long history in the United States that extends into different aspects of, you know, the Black and marginalized people experience here in this country, even, you know, immigrant experience in this country. But yeah, a lot of redlining affects the way schools are funded, especially through property tax. And it gets very complicated, but it's always good to bring up, right? I also see that Daniela said that she can relate to this video, having lived in you know, a community with a high Latinx population demographic. And again, that all comes down to things like property tax, right? I know another Daniela Rios, said the racial and economic segregation are very visible. And in my opinion, the other schools should be helping to contribute to the schools that don't have as much. And I think Larissa just said that she also related to the school, especially to the part where other students and teachers talked down upon the students from Block High School, which I'm super sorry that's happened to you. But yeah, your point about schools focusing on graduating students as opposed to preparing them for college is a very big thing. What a lot of students don't know is that oftentimes their school requirements don't meet like UC requirements, right? To attend, you know, the UC system schools or CSU, which creates obviously a very clear barrier for access to higher education. Did anyone else have any other points?
Yeah, I wanted to add something. I just think that students shouldn't be in the situation where they feel like they have to attend the army because the education system failed them. And I think what she said, like, I'm going to attend the army because I feel like I'm not prepared. I felt like I was like, it's just sad that we're in this situation, whether it's like because families can't afford to bring have their children in college, or because students don't feel like their schools have academically prepared them.
Yeah. Did anyone want to share any other thoughts?
I just wanted to like totally agree with that and just say that like I hate how the military industrial complex makes it out so that like the military is like this way of like, you know, get your education. Like it makes education seem much more accessible for like Black, Indigenous, and like people of color, and it's just like so disgusting because like especially with like the whole like when I say yen situation, like it just reminds you of how like literally those spaces aren't meant for us, but they're meant to seem like they are for the benefit of the country, of like another space that isn't meant for people like us. So it's just, I completely agree.
Yeah, a couple, thank you for sharing that. A couple comments here in the chat. Leslie had mentioned that she had a lot of PE teachers teaching other subjects that, like in the video they had mentioned, may not always be accredited to teach. Like in this case, you mentioned econ. I know in a lot of schools, PE teachers teach like health and sex ed, which is another point of contention, right, in this country. And she even mentioned how a lot of the investment into schools is invested into like security guards and policing schools, which is another very, very hot topic right now that is being discussed. Moving along to, there's a couple more comments. It looks like a lot of people are agreeing with your point, Jocelyn, about like how the military targets, underserved high schools and people from those marginalized communities because they don't feel like they have many choices. Yeah, Nia had mentioned how they prey on students, right? And that's true, and that's actually something that has been getting discussions like kind of going on at a national level now, where people are trying to make sure that the military stays out of low-income schools. Oh wow, a lot of things in the chat. Awesome, a lot of people are resonating with those points. Yeah, the point about schools having more security guards and counselors, nurses. I didn't go to school with a nurse, but I thought that was just normal. I, for the most part, did go to schools that were pretty well funded, but I also took 2 buses every morning to get to my 7 a.m. class to school. So obviously, that's not something that everyone can do. But yeah, did anyone have any other comments while I catch up on the chat?
I wanted to share, so I went to school, I've been in school in the Bay Area, in the San Jose area, and this is also something that schools in the certain districts in that city alone can relate to, in the sense of where the families and the students and the schools have to rally and put money together within the school, within that community, to try to get new textbooks that have been outdated for like 5 years already, that are falling apart. And I remember having to sell coffee, like ground coffee, door to door, to raise funds for my middle school so that we can get new equipment for our band program that was falling apart completely. And I thought that was normal, like, hey, yeah, we're coming together and fundraising, but little kids going door to door selling coffee, in retrospect, is a little bit different when it comes to school supplies, but that's how that relates to me, I guess.
Yeah, and that's why I had put that question about fundraising, right? Because the reality is that a lot of other students don't have to fundraise for, what we would consider education essentials. One, have textbooks not been an essential to education, right? Just a couple of things from the chat as well before we move on to the next portion. Nia had mentioned that she thought that Army recruiters on her campus were there to help her, as opposed to kind of get bodies in the Army, which is a big point, especially at that time when you're trying to figure out what you're trying to do, or what you want to do. When you don't see very many options, the Army can seem like a very lucrative offer. So that's very important. I know Betsy and a lot of other people are actually resonating with the point about Army recruiters being on their campuses daily. I actually didn't experience that very much. I had them come on my campus like once a year, but I know we had like a very intense ROTC program. I know a lot of schools have similar programs with like the Air Force and stuff like that. Yep. Awesome. Yeah, and I saw something about, oh wow, there's a lot of messages. Thank you for all the messages, by the way. There's people talking about how they're having group counseling sessions with teachers who are not certified to, to provide counseling. So that's another big point about how certified our teachers are to teach us what we're learning, and again, how that leads to disparities, even if we do get to higher education, right? Because then moving forward, I know a lot of you do attend higher like education institutions right now, and it's like it's very clear to see that especially freshman year, not everyone's on the same level, whether that be in like your reading, writing core classes, math. It's also like worrying about graduation rates and who's actually graduating at these institutions, not just who's being accepted, right? We do have to move on. Thank you for all the messages. We do have to get on to the next part where we'll be able to discuss this a little further. So this video is how these Black students fought modern day segregation. So actually, the reason I wanted to have the conversation about the first video is because there's a follow-up video that we're gonna watch. But before we watch, does anyone want to share maybe what they think the outcome of that movement was? Like, what do you think these students like banding together may have resulted in, realistically?
I guess like the students like in the video like might have gotten like noticed nationally because of this, and probably noticed by like colleges, and like I don't know, because like first thing I'm thinking is like, oh, maybe Ellen's gonna show up and like pay for the school, but like hopefully it's not that, and actually the structure of like the education like funding system there changed. So yeah.
Right. Not having a Band-Aid solution. Yeah, I see a lot of things on here about hopefully they got funding, more staff, certified teachers, having her go to community college if she feels like university is not the right step for her right now. Awesome. Cool. Let's go ahead and watch this real quick.
Last fall, students protested about unacceptable conditions and education disparities in a rural Louisiana school district.
The mold, the classrooms, the teachers, everything that you need in the school or could use in the school is not there.
Shercole Bowman is the 17-year-old Block High School senior who led other students in protest.
You don't feel like you've gotten the education you need?
No, sir.
Conditions at Block High School, where a majority of seniors are Black, were noticeably worse than those at nearby Harrisonburg High School, where the majority of that class is white and just 13 miles away. 3 months after our story published, the principal of Block High School resigned and the superintendent retired. The story caught the attention of a federal judge, Judge D. Drell, who ordered the school board and the Department of Justice appear in court to give him a progress report.
A federal judge did go on record saying that the school board ignored a 2013 order that would have moved along a 1969 desegregation case.
So we went back to Catahoula Parish for the hearing and to follow up with Shercole to see what's changed.
Hey, how's it going? Good to see you again. Wow, you got a new uniform? So what changed? When we first met you, you didn't think you were prepared for college, and you were thinking about the military.
When my story got out and so many people saw it, a lot of people was offering me help. At first, I was like, no, they just talking, they just doing that. But as I got more, compliments and more options, I was like, well, this could be real.
Various groups sent donations to the school and encouraged Shercole to go to college, offering her scholarships.
This comes after students protested school conditions, racial division, and other problems. And they say they're already addressing things like improvements to classrooms.
Overall, I think, we're moving in a positive direction.
Benny Volk is the athletic coach who inspired his students to speak out.
What's changed specifically?
We got a new superintendent, got a new principal. Basically, kids' attitudes change. Just the feeling that they know that there's some people out there that hear their voice.
The NAACP showed up at the latest hearing in March to ask Judge Drell for permission to represent students and families of Block High School, which she granted. As for a possible path forward, the mayor of Jonesville says consolidating the school district is the only option.
If all the schools in the parish are losing students, then that lets me know that we can all come together under one campus. you know, and then that way our teachers who are certified would be in one central location.
I feel like, you know, that school is improving because of what the children did. And they have been heard out. And, you know, it was the leaders who failed the children. It was us who failed the children.
Do you support the idea of a consolidated school district?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. It is the right thing to do.
It's down to necessity. The reality of it is, if there's not enough money, then you can't support all of these schools.
Oh, well, I'm taking my test tomorrow, and I got it right.
For students like Shercold, who once thought it was hopeless, there's now a real chance for a bright future.
So if you could go to any university now, where would you go?
I would go to UCLA.
UCLA?
Mm-hmm.
So if UCLA is listening right now.
I want to come to your school, play softball.
Okay. Are you going to apply to UCLA?
No, sir.
Why not?
Because it's out of state, and if I do get accepted and I do go, I'm going to cry for a real long time because I'm going to be away from my mom.
The federal judge ordered that the school board and the Department of Justice file updates in the case every 2 months, with more court dates to come.
Awesome. So what do we think of that? Again, I have some questions up on here. Like, why do you think that this was able to, you know, create the change and opportunities that it was able to do? And have you seen something like this? Maybe not to this extent, but a similar movement from students to kind of better their education?
I'm glad that they're able to kind of reach consensus of consolidating the schools, and I think it's a good long-term solution, and a lot of people seem pretty satisfied with it. But I think it's like a first step in like resolving all those issues. Like even with that in place, there needs to be like regular checkups. There has to be like more counselors, and let students know there's options other than going to the military and other than a four-year university, so it's trade school or community college. And it just begins with, again, it's a good first step, but there's still a lot to be done to give these students, specifically the Black students, an equitable opportunity at education that they were once stripped of very recently.
Right. I do see in the chat that Jocelyn mentioned that social media puts pressure on local politicians. We did see at the beginning of this video that after 3 months, the principal resigned and the superintendent retired, right? Any other thoughts? Right, so Diana mentioned that raising awareness was key because it caught the attention of the federal judge. And I don't know if you saw, but in the video, they also even had like link to the video, right? That they were able to use in the case. And again, like I mentioned, there are a lot of you on here who are, you know, at a four-year university, at a community college. How is it different, right? How's it different tackling these issues at a higher education institution? I know we saw the whole thing with COLA go down this year. For those of you who don't know, COLA is the cost of living adjustment, a movement that started at UC Santa Cruz with the grad students there. Basically, you know, cost of living is super, super high, and grad students don't make enough money teaching classes to you know, be able to live where their schools are located at, or do so without picking up another job, which obviously is very, very difficult when you're in grad school and also teaching. Does anyone have any thoughts on that? Do you maybe want to elaborate a little bit, Nia, about Pittman High School?
I can speak about it. I graduated from Pittman High last year, but I remember around the time there's a lot of controversy going on campus because Turlock itself, it's a lot of the population at Pittman is white and conservative, and the principal doesn't do anything about, say, if a student brings a truck with a Trump flag. But I remember in order to avoid bad media coverage, when there's news trucks coming to the school, suddenly we'd have to actually like stand up for the national anthem. And I was, I think, a junior around that time. And in my first 2 years at this school, as a freshman and a sophomore, they never did that. So the principal was, I think that she was like trying to hide something and trying to like make it seem like, oh yeah, we all stand for it. But if it were up to me, I would not have stood for it because I personally don't believe in a lot of the things due to like the controversy because of the reason why he kneeled. Because I believe in why he kneeled.
Right. Does anyone have any other thoughts? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead move forward. Thank you for sharing, Nia. Yeah, if you have any other thoughts, feel free to throw them in the chat, or you can raise your hand or just start speaking. Cool. So moving along, we're gonna talk a little bit about like the idea of the American dream. We're gonna share some statistics and facts with you all about, you know, particularly like, you know, the Black experience and then, you know, the marginalized community experience in education. Oh, actually, yes, I see that Vanessa just mentioned a stretch break. Let's actually do that. We've been sitting for quite a while. I'm gonna go ahead and give everyone a 5-minute stretch break and then we'll come back. Does that sound good? Yeah, okay. Try not to leave and just, you know, mute and hide your camera. Thank you. Okay, it looks like the time is starting to wind down a bit. If everyone can start coming back. Give everyone about a minute or so to come back a little bit. And while we're waiting for people to kind of start coming back a little bit, did anyone have any feedback on the videos? If you enjoy like us sharing information with you that way, as opposed to presentation or other ways to share information with you all?
I think I like both, and I think the videos portray the real world story, which definitely painted made it more like you can see it how it impacts people right then and there. I think that really got the point across when showing the video.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you for letting me know, Jennifer, and you as well, Paula. Yeah, we want to make sure, because the sessions are 2 hours, that we're, you know, not kind of drilling you all the whole time. The videos we would share experience points of views with the group. Awesome. Okay, so it looks like most people are back now, so we'll go ahead and continue. So again, yeah, we're going to be talking about a couple of things here. I'm sure a lot of you have heard. I'm glad that you like the videos, Shakina. Again, a lot of you may have already seen this before, or may have heard of it, or even had discussions on this. But I think it's always great to have these discussions as a broader group, in case some of you haven't, you know, talked about this or heard about it. But also, I think perspective is super important. And us being in a larger group, we can provide a lot of those different perspectives to each other, or with each other, right? So a lot of this actually came from Ben and Jerry 2017 campaign on the school to prison pipeline. If a lot of you don't know, Ben and Jerry's is, I don't say notorious, but is kind of known for talking about these issues generally. They've been doing it for a while. I've been following them for a few years, and they tend to speak up about a lot of different things. So yeah, so the links are at the bottom right if you want to check them out, and we can also send that out to you if you're interested. But we're gonna go over the unrealistic American dream. Does anyone want to share? Have you ever been told, whether it be by family or, you know, an educator, about the American dream, if you're supposed to be following it, stuff like that? I know I've heard it a lot. Does anyone want to share a little bit about that?
I know. Do you want to go?
It looks like you can go, Kenya.
Okay, thank you.
Or
Sorry.
it's Holly. I'm not sure who's who.
Kenya. Basically, well, from what I heard, I know my mom talks about it a lot, especially as we grow up. She's always pushed us to like seek out a good education, and just like try to get something that she didn't get, unfortunately. But yeah, we pretty much grew up with that idea. But as we grow older, we see that sometimes it's not a possibility to get what we want because we're minorities.
Right. Do you have something to share, Paula? And I see that your hand is also raised. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to say, coming from an immigrant household, it's like your parents came here to like start a new life, like take all these opportunities, land of opportunity, like everyone can make it here in the United States, but in reality that's not true. And I feel like people push this narrative that if you just work hard enough, that if POC just worked hard enough, then they would be able to become rich and maintain like a living wage. And that the fact that there's poor POC people is because they're lazy. Like, no, that's not true at all. There's so many barriers to prevent people of color from either pursuing higher education or getting a job, or just all these biases present that, again, just prevent them from pursuing their education further.
Yeah, and I'm seeing a lot of people in chat agreeing with the points that are being made. Yeah, I've heard it my whole life as well. Nia, did you have something to add?
I forgot that I wasn't muted, or that I was muted. I'm sorry.
No worries.
But yeah, like I do agree. Like I feel like even if you come from a family of immigrants, no matter where your family was from, you always hear about, like, oh, we moved here because we wanted to push for you to have a better life. But then it's hard for us to have that better life that our families strive for us to have, because there's a lot of barriers that have been set in place due to racism, and how all these ideas of like white supremacy have been upheld by systems and by a lot of people that are in power. And it's just sad, because I feel like that's why a lot of people seem to feel like the American dream is dead, because we can't reach the dreams that like our parents have dreamt for us.
Right, and a lot of the times we talk about like burden, right? Where a lot of the times our families will not have things like retirement plans. So who's going to take care of parents when they're older, right? Or who's going to take care of family? Real quick in chat, I also see a lot of people talking about it. I see that Larissa was mentioning that it's always brought up about how we're supposed to automatically be successful because we're, in this country at a younger age. I think Jacqueline, you had your hand up.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna kind of build on how like it's like a double-edged sword, because for like some of our parents, like I know like my dad works in the fields, and like it's like it can be a lot, but it also like pushes me forward to remember like why I'm doing things a lot, but also it like can sometimes from the outside can perpetuate like bad things, because people are like I forgot who said it.
Jacqueline, I can't hear you. I don't know if anyone else is having that issue. Can you all hear Jacqueline? No?
No, we can't.
Do you want to maybe try again?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Okay, where did I leave off?
You were mentioning how your dad working in the fields oftentimes pushes you, but then also you were heading off to your next point.
Okay, it just perpetuates like the idea that, oh, everyone's equal, we can all achieve the American dream at the same rate, but that's not the reality.
Right. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. In the chat, a couple of things. Alejandra had mentioned that there's no such thing as a meritocracy, an American dream. That's actually something that I've struggled with, because I always was, I work hard, I deserve to be in college, or I deserve to have this type of car, I deserve to make this type of money. Even now, like me transitioning from, graduating college to getting a job, especially during this time, I was like, no, I should be making, whatever amount of money and stuff like that. So yeah, your point about not being able to pull yourself up by the bootstraps when people have, an advantage, they're halfway there, right? Like a lot of us don't have any uncles, aunts, parents who have gone to college, while, we have friends whose whole family have attended college, and that's just like us graduating high school is an expectation, well, them graduating college is an expectation, stuff like that. I see that Jocelyn also mentioned that the American dream is very individualized and doesn't focus on the collective well-being. As an economist, that's something that I actually look at a lot. When you look at things, you also want to look at, there's always a cost to something, right? It doesn't always have to be a financial cost. It could be a time cost. It could be a opportunity cost. It's oftentimes we have to think about who's willing to take that up. I know that there was things in the comments about, maybe the Block High School got more resources, but the students who were seniors would never see those resources, right? Because that's coming up after their time, stuff like that. So again, it's who's willing to take up that cost. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of things on here, but we do have to move forward. But again, thank you for all your messages. So we're almost done. So I'm just gonna read off this real quick. So then, realistic American dream. This touches upon a lot of what all of you said. You hear it from everyone: go to school, do well, get into college, and you're on your way to a good job and a happy life. You put in the work and you'll be rewarded. That's the promise of education. Sounds great and like it should be true, right? But the closer you look, the more this promise begins to seem a little bit more like a fantasy. No one denies that education is important. It's just that the path to achievement and advancement is easier for some than for others. People of color face barriers to success every single day from a very early age that whites never even have to think, let alone worry about, right? And sorry, I'm not ignoring your messages in chat, but I do need to get through this real quick. So I think it's important to note that racism starts early, right? A lot of us start to think about it in high school, maybe even as early as middle school, and some of us don't think about it until college or beyond, right? But a study found that Black scholars are much more likely to be suspended from preschool than white scholars. So Black scholars make up 18% of all preschoolers, but represent almost 50% of all preschool suspensions. That's a crazy, crazy statistic. Right, yeah, I didn't know people could be suspended from preschool either, Shakina. So compare that to white kids who make up to 43% of all preschool enrollment, yet represent 26% of those receiving suspensions. Why is this happening? A recent study might shine some light on what's going on. It found that Black boys are as young as 10 are routinely perceived to be significantly older and less innocent when compared to white boys of the same age. In our society, this suspicion of guilt follows people of color throughout their whole lives. So it is important to think about the fact that it starts at a really, really young age. Thank you for your message, Elizabeth, no worries. Go ahead. And feel free to, keep putting things in the chat. So some data released by the US Department of Education, Black scholars represent 90% of students with disabilities and a ridiculous 36% of those with disabilities who are restrained at school. So this is something that I'm actually not super familiar with. I did go to a high school with a high population of students with special needs and disabilities, but to think that they're, being restrained at a much higher rate, often, is a scary thought. I couldn't imagine being restrained. Yeah, and you're making a great point about perceiving, Black students of all ages as less innocent and more mature. Yeah, Kelly, same thing. When Black scholars and white scholars commit similar infractions, Black scholars are suspended, expelled 3 times more than white scholars. Black scholars make up to 16% of student enrollment, but represent 27% of students referred to law enforcement and 31% of students subjected to arrest. White scholars, on the other hand, make up 51% of enrollment, 41% of students referred to law enforcement, and 39% of those arrested. Right, so the idea that these numbers, based on enrollment, based on all these different things, these numbers should be the same across the board, right? The percentage or proportions of people being arrested, again, whether that's the right thing or not, but people being arrested from school should be the same based on enrollment if we're assuming that we're not, including things like bias and stuff like that. Let's see, bias for children of minority groups. Yeah, so Kelly, you had mentioned the adultification bias, where children of minority groups are seen as more mature and thus held to higher standards of consequences. Yeah, that's really important to know. It also doesn't feel fair. And I know that a lot of the times it's, things like that happen because we're also having to take on more adult responsibilities like childcare, especially if you're the oldest child. That also adds a level of, bias in that. The school to prison pipeline heavily impacts Black students. Yeah, so great point, Paula. I don't know if everyone here has heard of the school to prison pipeline, but it's something that has been being talked about for years, where students from marginalized communities, students of color, immigrant students are being pushed straight to prisons from their schools, right? And oftentimes that starts as, they're going to juvenile detention. Recently, there was that case that garnered a lot of attention about the student who was sent to juvenile detention for not completing, her online coursework as part of her probation, stuff like that. So it definitely starts by putting students in juvenile detention and, transitioning them over to prison, or often trying minors as adults, right? Which we've seen happen a lot more often in Black students and scholars of color, right? So yeah, we wanted to give you some time for open discussion. If anyone wants to share thoughts on that or anything else that we discussed today, I know it was a lot. Did anyone want to share anything?
I have a question for everyone. Is this like the first time you guys seen this or learned this information? If so, you guys can just like type in the chat, like put the hand emoji, raise your hand. Just curious.
I could share. So definitely in like high school, I never learned about any of this at all, like at all, until I took like a college course, a Chicanx, Latinx studies and history course where we were able to talk about this, but definitely like in grade school, it was never spoken about. If anything, like in the past few months on social media, I've been able to learn more about this stuff that we've been talking about right now. Well, I learned a lot right now, but more of this type of stuff on social media than I ever have in school, So yeah, it's kind of crazy how I've been learning more, doing my own research and, getting information on social media and online than I ever did in actual school. Yeah. But it was very informational and I did learn a lot of new things. So thank you.
Yeah, if anyone else would like to share, I'm going through chat right now. I see that a lot of people are agreeing with that sentiment, having learned a lot of things from social media, which let's be honest, gets clowned on a lot. But our generation is especially has leveraged social media to educate each other and educate ourselves, which I think is super important. Did anyone else want to share?
I guess I could quickly share. I think from lived experience, there's a lot that I've learned that I hadn't been able to put words to up until I started going to like discussions on my college classes that were coming up and popping up. And that's when I started to get the words, like the pipeline, for instance. I saw it happen with Latino students, Black students, how they would be stopped by the police officers during lunch breaks or looked at differently or treated as an adult when they weren't. They were like 13 or 14. That I saw and learned through just my own experience. And then the words finally came later on in college, which was very much more informative and insightful for me.
Right, it's hard to call things out when you don't know what to call them, right?
Mm.
Yeah, it looks like everyone, well, a lot of people were mentioning that this was more like lived experience more than learned from academia, which is a big point because there's oftentimes no discussion about how academia can be elitist. And, a lot of us, like myself included, can fall into that where being the only person from, like from my neighborhood, I'm the only one who went to college, right? And it's like, okay, well, I have to consistently be like, well, I can't just assume that people know this. I can't assume that this is general knowledge for my parents, for my family, for our neighbors. So how do I battle that bias or that, that like attitude, right? Like that attitude in yourself when talking to other people. Did anyone else want to share? No, there's a lot of conversation happening in chat as well, so I'm trying to keep up.
I just want to add something. I think that's why, like, especially if you're in college or just graduated, I think it's important that we bring this education that we learned like back into our communities, because some of our family members like haven't didn't have access to this education. So I think that it's important to bring that back, and it checks ourselves too. Like, I don't think that people who graduated should kind of have like this air to them, like, oh, like, look at me. I feel like that's one way that we can help our communities. An example would be that I took a sociology policing class, and like that's how I learned about, like, for example, how police were created through slave patrols. And then I told that to my family, and they were like, wait, what? Like, they didn't know about that. So I think that that's like a way that we can help our communities, especially those who have finished college.
Yeah, right. Especially, I keep bringing it up because I studied economics and studied the kind of value of education. You know, the value more so than just the dollar amount that your family or yourself may have to go on in debt or paid for your education. That value can go a lot further than just yourself, right? So it's always considering how far you can take that. I see that quite a few people are recommending different pieces of literature and books. So maybe what I'll do is in that contacts list, you don't have to put your contact in there if you don't like, but I'll put a section for book suggestions or other, you know, links and stuff like that that you all may want to share, especially if you want to learn a little bit more about the different topics that we talked about. I think that would be a great place for everyone to share resources. I know I took also a sociology class and had to read a whole textbook on lies our teachers told us. That was the title of the book. Just because it's super surprising how biased history is. And I know we discussed how we don't always think history or things that seem factual can be biased, but everything can be biased, right? Even statistics, even science, everything can be biased. Did anyone else want to share? Also, I definitely recommend if you don't tend to speak up in these meetings, I would super recommend to do so, especially with something like this. You get out of it a lot more if you put in more to it, right? Especially with discussion and interaction. I want to give anyone else a chance to share before we close off today's meeting. Looks like we're done with discussions for today. I'm gonna go ahead and move on. Yeah, and there's a lot of book discussion going on in the chat right now. So yeah, just thank you everyone for attending today's session. We're still having really, really high numbers of people showing up, which is a great sign for us that you all are enjoying kind of the content that we're able to share with you all, and you know, the discussions that we're able to kind of have in these meetings. Definitely send us recommendations of things that you may, you know, if you have a piece of literature that you may be, you know, this would be great to show in class, or, you know, this article or whatever it is. And we can also pull it up to discuss it, definitely. Again, we want this to be dynamic and stuff. Did anyone have any questions, you know, whether it be like more administrative before we sign off? No? Okay. Well, the email's on there as well. Also, check out our website where you can sign up for our newsletters, especially with everything happening right now. We're putting out newsletters or emergency statements, especially with the whole DACA, you know, situation that just happened. If you don't know what happened, basically, Trump is now cutting off initial DACA applications, even though he was told that he had to accept them. And if you're renewing your DACA, you will now only get the work permit for 1 year as opposed to 2. But Siren has a whole statement of that on our website and is also sent out to everyone. And actually, the lovely Vanessa is the one who puts together our newsletters, our monthly newsletters, correct? So if you want to get some more information about what Siren is doing and what services and what other things we're providing, feel free to sign up there. Yeah, thank you, everyone. Have a great day. We can end a little early.
Thank you.